everyone was back?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to take roll to make sure everybody's back. So please answer when I call your name. Maria Serpa. You're unmuted. Not here. Debbie Veal.
I'm here.
Thank you. Sung Oh. Sung.
I'm here.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Here.
Thank you. Jig Patel.
Here.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Here.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ryan Brooks.
Here.
Thank you. Back to Maria Serpa.
Here.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we're back. Debbie, or let's find out. Noreen, do you have anything for us yet?
Yes, I just sent some language to Ms. Sodergren, but I can read it to you if that would help.
We've provided it to the moderator. They're working on displaying it so everyone, including members of the public as well as the board members, can see.
Okay, great. In the meantime, Debbie, you want to move on while we're waiting?
Sure. Ann, I was just going to say you were kind of, we could understand what you were saying, but you were kind of breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, she was.
So I don't know, Greg, do we want to just see if there's any other comments from the board or the public? I'm not sure the specific language. Why don't we just see if there's other board comments?
I think maybe we better wait until we have that language for board comments. Oh, here it comes.
Yeah.
What?
So on this section.
What's that noise?
I think Ann's connection.
This is the moderator, and you may want to try connecting through your phone's audio. Your audio on your end started getting pretty distorted. Give us one moment while we get Ann's connection back up.
Thank you.
So I think while we're waiting for Ann, I mean, I can see, can everyone see?
Oh, yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Okay. So if you look, so you have to look at two parts. So we took out the word California in 1746A, and then if you scroll down, you'll see in number 3, item 3 was added. Training obtained as part of a qualifying graduate degree program can be documented by a written certification from the registrar or training director of the educational institution, a program from which a licensee graduated, stating that the training is included within the institution's curriculum required for graduation at the time the applicant graduated, or within the coursework that is completed by the applicant.
Yeah, Member Veal, yeah, I threw that together pretty quickly, so I'm, feel free to wordsmith away. I can also suggest that when there is time to act on the motion, that you can delegate to the executive officer the authority to make changes consistent with the policy of ensuring that licensees know how to establish that they've met the training. And if there's a simpler way to do it, then we can look at a simpler way to do it.
You know, my only question, Noreen, is so we have the training program is so satisfy the following criteria, and one of the criteria is number 3 is this graduate. I guess I was hoping that the, you know, if we're going to spell this all out, it seems like, and maybe I'm just maybe I just don't know the hierarchy here, but by putting it as number 3, I just want to make sure that number 3, the training at the school, includes 1 A, B, C, D, E, F. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're correct. I may not have followed the outline the way it should have been followed. I was just trying to throw the language in there somewhere, and it might be better down. I believe. I don't think you've got. I don't. It might be better down in B where it talks about documentation and how the person's supposed to maintain. Yeah, so it might be better there. But, okay. Yeah, good, very good point. Thank you.
Okay, so Albert, I think you made the motion. Are you okay with the modification and also adding in that, I don't know the right way to say this, Noreen, but it's, the executive officer can make non-substantive changes to the language?
Yes, it would be delegating the authority to the executive officer to work with legal and potentially the committee's chair to make changes to the language consistent with the policy that you have discussed here today.
Oh, okay with the change.
Okay. Yeah, how about
Cheryl, Cheryl, did you second?
No, you second that.
You
That's
did.
Right. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, I'm
Do you
good
agree with that? Okay. Okay. Now we'll go with. Do we have any other member comments at this point? If not, we'll go on to public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
Okay, this is the moderator. At the request of the board, I will go ahead and open up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please click on the icon with a question mark and a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. Okay, now it looks like we do have an individual who has requested public comment, Danny Martinez. All right, Danny, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning, and I'm unmuting your microphone now.
Hi, thank you. And moderator, could you please put up the language that they're voting on so I can see that again, please?
Yes, give us 1 second. Let me pause your timer. Okay, there. Now we have it back up.
Thank you. So I guess my comment really is seeing that this wasn't in the meeting materials or even agendized, I guess I'm kind of questioning why this should be brought up now as opposed to putting this back to the committee and having a discussion on the merits of this. I'm just reading this obviously for the first time like everyone else is, and would like to request that this be sent back to committee for further analysis. I'm not saying that we don't agree with or oppose this. We actually do. We just want to make sure that the language is correct and workable for all parts. So I guess I would and specifically I do have some questions if I can get down there on the number 3. It's the training director. I mean, what I guess I would ask, what does that mean in terms of a school? Can the dean be part of that? Does a professor qualify as that? Some questions I'd like answered there. So I guess I would like to request that this be sent back to committee.
This is Anne. Can you hear me okay? Is it better?
Yes.
Much.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
So my concern with sending it back to committee is twofold, one of which is we have an emergency regulation that will be expiring, and although we do have the 90-day extension provisions, that could be a little challenging. The other thing that I would note is that this is just draft. It will be released for the 45-day comment period, which will allow stakeholders, the 45 days to really review the language and really think about it and provide comments. So it's not like this is the last opportunity to provide comments to the board for consideration. They will absolutely get that opportunity through the rulemaking process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ann. Okay.
All right, we'll move on to the next individual who has requested public comment. individual identified as Stephen Gray. Stephen, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning, and I am unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you very much. I would just like to point out that this concept of having it as a part of the school's training program was already approved by the committee when this was last discussed last year or earlier this year. And I believe it just was inadvertently omitted when the emergency regulation and so forth came out. So I agree with Ann's comment that going forward, there will be an opportunity to fine tune this, but I urge the board to go ahead and vote approval of this going forward so we can start the 45-day comment period and remind everybody that this was part of an urgency statute and is part of an urgency public health matter, and we don't want to delay it any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
And Steve, thank you for that comment because you're exactly right. We did discuss it as a committee. This specific topic came up, and the committee did vote and indicate in the past that we absolutely wanted to allow it to the record through the California curriculum. And when the commenter brought it up at our last committee meeting, it was more of, hey, you guys, remember we talked about this. This was supposed to be in here. And so this was us trying to fix it.
Okay, thank you. Have any more public comment?
That was the last individual who requested public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature now?
Yes, please.
Okay, the Q&A feature is now closed.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. We've had member and public comment, so it's time to vote. We'll start with Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'm really sorry, Mr. President, just to clarify that this is approving the language for noticing, correct?
Correct. Okay, Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. Ryan Brooks.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes, I support.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. Motion passes. Okay. Debbie, continue.
Mr. President, I'll move on to agenda item D, discussion consideration of proposal to develop a temporary closure status and mandatory notification requirement for board license sites. So just as a background, over the last couple of years, we've had a number of declared disasters, and more recently, we've had, the civil unrest, which has caused pharmacies to be damaged, destroyed, closed for a couple of days, up to having to be closed, temporary closure. And although it's currently not required, many of these facilities do notify the board when a temporary closure occurs, and such notification allows the board to maintain a better operational history. And currently it's in kind of an informal situation, but it does provide transparency to the consumers, licensees, and other healthcare professionals. And so part of our mandate, as we discussed, is we felt like this was, part of our education for the for all these different areas, the consumers, licensees, health professionals, and really just even for the board itself. Current law does not establish a requirement of the notification, and requiring notification would would ensure consistent reporting requirements for the board. So what the committee discussed was that we had a draft policy proposal which included a piece that expressed that it could be potentially punitive, and that was removed, so that the proposal that the committee is bringing before the board is 1708.1, which is in attachment 4, and it says a permit holder shall notify the board of any temporary closure of the facility as soon as any closure exceeds 3 consecutive calendar days, and closure dates would be public information. So listening to what we had heard from the stakeholders who generally thought it was a good idea, but that we just needed to kind of fine tune the point at which the information would be made, and so that's why we ended up with any closure which exceeds 3 consecutive calendar days, and also taking out the punitive piece. So the committee recommends moving forward with recommending the board initiate rulemaking based on the proposed language of CCR 1708.1 that I just read. The members instructed the executive officer and committee chair to work with legal to make any minimal edits to clarify when the pharmacy needs to notify the board on these 3 days as discussed during the meeting. So that was our recommendation that we're making to the board.
So that is a committee motion.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, are there any member comments?
Yes. I just recommend, I recommend that we move for the support of 1708.1 notification of temporary closure to allow for closure to be announced if it exceeds 3 consecutive days.
Thank you, Cheryl. Any other member comment?
This is
All right.
Maria. I have a couple of questions for Ms. Veal
Sure.
and the committee. And just questions. I'm sure there was a lot of discussion about 3 consecutive days. Maybe you could speak a little bit to that versus like 3 business days or 5 consecutive days. If you could just briefly speak to why you chose 3 consecutive. And then the second one is a question, and it's more of a legal question, is the definition of temporary closure, is that going to impact, or should it, and maybe it should, places that pharmacies that may close because of vacation or death in the family, and they're out of, those kinds of situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Debbie, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I can answer at least the first part, and then maybe we can have Ann or Noreen weigh in on your second part of your question. The 3 consecutive days, Maria, we just felt like that was enough that after like 3 days, that we felt like, and kind of the feedback we got, and where we landed at it, it's not scientific at all. It was just, based on, feedback that after 3 days, it seemed like a pharmacy would know, is this, going to be, actually, am I going to have to do a temporary closure? Because they might have already been closed the 3 days, but after 3 days, it just seemed like they would know if this is going to be kind of more of a long-term thing or if I'm back up and running. And they said a little bit off of the civil unrest and then also off of the fires, that kind of seemed to be how long pharmacies tended to be closed to kind of do a quick cleanup. But it's not scientific, and if anybody has any information that a different number or a different way of stating this would be more appropriate, I think we'd be open for a for a change. But this is kind of, that's how we arrived at it. It's just through discussion and sharing.
Debbie, I think 3 days is kind of short. Sometimes if it's computer damage and anything we need to fix, so I would suggest that we should say 7 consecutive days instead of just 3 days.
Okay, you want to answer? Does anybody else have a comment on that particular item? Otherwise, we'll go to Noreen to answer the legal portion. Okay?
Or Ann, I don't know Ann around.
Or Ann. Okay. Want to chime in on that legal portion?
Excuse me, this is Noreen. I think the temporary closure would be any temporary closure, whether it be for vacation, remodeling, there's a fire in the area. That's how I understood what the board was trying to capture, just so that if there was a closure for a significant period of time, that the board got timely notice of that.
Okay, thank you. Maria, do you have a follow-up on this?
No, thank you for the discussion.
Thank you.
Hey, Maria, I just have a question. Does 7 seem more appropriate? Did you have an opinion of what is a reasonable number of days?
No, I was mostly looking at maybe, some other choices that make it longer than 3 consecutive days, but maybe not as long as 7, maybe 3 business days, maybe 5 consecutive days. It's more of, I understand what your point is, a good one, but 3 consecutive days could be, a 48-hour remodel. It could be emergency leaving for, 4 or 5 days to deal with a death in the family across the country or internationally. This could happen quite a bit. So I was just trying to avoid a lot of paperwork.
Thank you.
This is Ann. Can I just chime in for just a moment? I apologize. I think that when we look at this through the lens of the consumer, when you're waiting for your prescription and you don't know that the pharmacy is closed, 7 days may be a long time. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think that at the committee trying to balance, not trying to create a burdensome reporting requirement, but ensuring that those consumers, licensees, and the board had an understanding of the operational history was what we were trying to get to. But when you think about a consumer waiting to get their prescription and not understanding that something's closed, that could be a long time and could perhaps result in any, potentially delays in therapy.
So Anna, this is Maria. I totally see your point, but to me, this is all about notifying the board, because the typical patient is not going to be going to the board's website. I think that if we don't have language someplace else, we should have something about signage that when there is any closure, greater than 24 hours or greater than something, that there's signage at the pharmacy telling people where to go to get their needs taken care of. Your point is a really good one about
Absolutely.
I didn't think that was part of this. This was just about notifying the board and paperwork kind of stuff.
This is Albert. 3 consecutive work days okay with me.
Thank you, Albert.
Okay, in my motion, I'm okay with changing my motion to 3 consecutive calendar days.
That's actually, Cheryl, that is the motion by the committee, and so we're good.
Right.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Is that a change then? Because that's what's written.
No.
There's
No
no
change. No change.
I think he was meaning 3 business days, but go ahead.
No, you know what? That's exactly what I wanted to say. I'm sorry. I meant to say 3 consecutive business days.
This is Noreen. I would be a little concerned about specifying business days where there's it would be very much left up to the interpretation of the licensee of what's a business day. So for example, if I go on vacation at the end of the year for 2 weeks every year, I don't consider that a business day. So I'd caution using a term that's much open to interpretation. And if you're concerned about the time, then maybe what you do want to look at is still look at calendar days, but maybe lengthen it to 4 or 5, something along those lines, so that everyone, excuse me, everyone knows what kind of day we are counting.
All right, so if we were to change this, we would have to first vote down the committee motion and then have a new motion. But first, we have to get public comment, so.
Mr. President, by my notes, and I'm not sure that they're entirely accurate, I see a motion, but I didn't know, not sure I heard a second, and therefore.
Well, we don't need it. It's a committee motion.
True. That's true. Thank you.
Okay. So we have the committee motion, and at this point, do we have any other member comments before I turn over to public comment? No? Okay. Moderator, please open the lines for public comment.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please click on that icon with a question mark and a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. And it looks like we do have one individual who has requested public comment. Danny Martinez, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you. Board members, as noted in the additional materials, we did submit a letter expressing our regret for opposition to this. And I just want to note that it just doesn't seem, we don't really understand why this is necessary. There seems to be a lot left out from this. You know, I didn't apologize if it was mentioned, but I didn't hear, what is the board going to do with this? Are they going to put this on the website of a licensee that their facility is closed? If so, are you going to, dedicate staff to this? What are the cost implications for this? What happens if there's any delay in the updating of said information? And more so to the point that member Serpa was making, there's times where, whether it's not a disaster or civil unrest, that there's times of the death in the family. This is kind of not on their mind, is to notify the board that they're going to be closed. They don't know if they're going to be closed. In the sense of, or as it relates to COVID, testing may change from day to day. Maybe you don't wait a week. Maybe you wait 3 days, 4 days. How do you know at that point? And as it relates to civil unrest, as we've seen, we've listed in our letter all the bullet points that have to be dealt with immediately, that currently have to happen due to law. And this would be something else that the pharmacy is now having to do. I guess I would really question, what is the need for this at this time? And would respectfully request that you guys reconsider this and please not move forward with it.
Thank you, Danny.
Just a clarification, Danny. Yeah, and our intent is to put it on the board's website.
Yeah, Danny, I think that this is Albert. That's the need for that, because during the unrest, during the protest here in Oakland, there's quite a few pharmacies closed, and they don't know when they reopen. So a lot of patients did not know what to do. So I think with a notice that will help.
Okay, do we have any other public comment?
Yes. The next individual who has requested public comment, individual identified as Stephen Gray. And quickly, before I unmute his microphone, if I could just remind board members and senior staff to please mute your microphone when you aren't speaking so we don't have any background noise. Stephen, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment on this. I would like to reinforce what Executive Officer Sodergren said about from the public's perspective. A lot of things have changed in the last few years, including, for an example, the implementation more and more of not only 30-day supply limits on prescription drugs by payers, but also refill too soon restrictions. And a lot of patients are getting more and more caught without their medications, and even a small interruption like 2 or 3 or 4 days can require them to go without their medication. More recently, there have been significant limits on opioid prescriptions. Opioid prescriptions, as we all know, are a severe problem, but some of them have been limited to a 7-day supply or other supplies, at which time, if the patient goes without the opioid, they effectively become opioid naive. And then if they get their medication, they could be in serious trouble of an opioid overdose. So I know that there were various reasons for the pharmacy committee to consider this. One was pharmacy security. Others were just the status of a licensed pharmacy. Is it open or closed? What's going on? But there are also serious patient implications when pharmacies, especially independent pharmacies, where there isn't necessarily another pharmacy that shares their database that can serve the patient with their needs. Thank you very much.
All right, this is the moderator. We'll move on to the next individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as Paige Taylor. Paige, you will be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now. Oh, apologies, I clicked the wrong button. Let me... Okay, Paige, you will be unmuted now.
Okay, great. Thank you. As the moderator said, this is Paige Talley, and I'm actually represented as a consumer today. And I like what Maria Serpa said about having a pharmacy put a notice on their door that they're going to be closed for a certain amount of time, even if it's only 24 hours. Because as a consumer and having a child who needs medicine, I want to be able to go to my pharmacy and pick it up. And representing CCAP, my member pharmacies would not have a problem with putting a signage on the door. So I like that. I like your proposal, but I also like the fact that the consumers need to be considered as well. Thank you.
Right, this is the moderator again. That was the last individual who has requested public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature now?
Greg, you do want her to close the Q&A, correct?
Yes, yes. I was muted too. Yes, please close it up.
All right, the Q&A feature has been closed.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
Mr. President, can we call for the vote then?
Yeah, we have a committee motion. We have, everybody has spoken, so we're calling for the vote. I will go first with Ryan Brooks. Ryan? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Cheryl Butler?
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa?
No, and just to remind the members, I thought we were going to be changing the number of days. No, thank you.
Okay. Debbie Veal?
Yes.
Jig Patel? Jig, unmute. Okay,
Yes.
oh, thank you. Okay, Albert Wong?
Yes.
Okay, Ricardo Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Ho?
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes. Maria, as a point of clarification, we did talk about the changing the days, but then it seemed like everybody went back to the original. Albert came back and changed.
I was under the impression we were voting on the committee motion, and if that failed, we would create a new motion with a new number of days. So
That's correct, but the committee
motion needed to fail before we could change the days. That was the reason. But
you are right. You're right. But the committee motion passed. Okay. Debbie, go ahead with your report.
Okay. Agenda item E is discussion and consideration of proposal to amend Title 16 California Code Regulations, Section 1704, change of address. Currently, Section 1704 establishes the requirement to a licensee to provide a current resident address with the board and to report any change in the resident address within 30 days of moving or changing. The board previously indicated its preference to streamline communication with applicants and licensees through email because it's an efficient way to communicate. However, there's no requirements for applicants and licensees to provide the board with an email address, nor to maintain an email address when a change occurs. So the committee during our meeting discussed the use of regulating, considering a regulation change around applicants and licensees in regards to changing an email address if they have one. Committee members agreed with the advantages of applicants and licensees providing the board with their email address, but expressed concern that email address would then be released to the public. So council did advise us during the meeting that personal information such as email address and telephone numbers are not releasable. The committee also expressed concern with the language in the proposal that referenced the potential for enforcement action for noncompliance, and that was removed from the language that we had. So the language that we ended up with is in 1704, changing 1704 from being change of address to providing addresses, and adding section B, which says each applicant and person holding a certificate, license, permit, or registration who has an electronic mail address shall provide it to the board, that electronic mail address, and shall maintain a current electronic mail address, if any, with the board. So let me just kind of highlight that, you know, if you don't have an email address, obviously you don't have to make one up. This is just if you have one that is part of the information you would provide to the board, and that it, you know, the intent would be that you would keep it current. As previously noted, we did remove any enforcement action for noncompliance. So the committee recommendation motion is to move forward with recommending to the board initiating rulemaking process with the proposed language and to remove subsection C. Actually, I don't need to say that. To move forward with recommending to the board initiating the rulemaking process with the proposed language that I just stated. And, you know, I think we would, I actually don't have a motion language here. So I guess I will need I need a motion from the committee because I guess we made a recommendation, and this is what came out of the recommendations, that the executive officer, the attorney, and myself came up with this language to recommend to the board. But since we didn't have it, the board could not make a motion. So we will need a motion to move this proposed language forward.
Okay. Do we have member comments? No? Okay. Moderator,
Can I first get someone to make a motion?
I go ahead, move to make, I make the motion.
Okay. And I second. And this is Cheryl Butler, and I second.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other member comments?
Sorry, this is staff. Can I just clarify that the motion would be to initiate a rulemaking to amend section 1704 and then to delegate to the executive officer the authority to make changes consistent with the board's policy, both either at the request of the control agencies or as otherwise necessary?
Correct. That is the motion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll open up for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please click on that icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. Right, now it looks like we do have one individual who has requested public comment. Robert Stein. All right, Robert, you will be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you. I just have a comment that Business and Professions Code 4013 already addresses the provision of email addresses to the board's notification list. And I guess my question to the board is that a different email address expectation than what we're proposing in 1704? Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
This is the moderator. It looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Okay.
Noreen or Ann, I believe that is a different email address request and has different whatever. Can you?
Yeah, I believe we. Yeah, this is Noreen. I believe we discussed that at the committee level. That is not information that goes to the board. It's a separate listserv, and the board does not necessarily have access to that database.
Okay. Having heard from members and having heard from the public, we have a motion, we have a second, so let's vote. I'll start with Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. Jig Patel. You're on mute, Jig.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. Ryan Brooks.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes. Motion passes. Continue, Debbie.
Okay, our last agenda item is the licensing statistics. And in your packet in attachment 6 are all the detailed statistics, including a 3-year data comparison. But looking at the 3-year data comparison, you will see a slight reduction in the number of individual applications received as well as licenses issued. There's a modest increase in the site applications received, and the number of site applications issued shows a large growth. But this is primarily due to the increase in the ADDS licenses and the government-owned clinics seeking licensure. So overall, our licensed population has remained flat over the last 3 years. The other thing that the licensing committee tries to focus on and is of great importance is the processing time of our licenses. The general application and deficient mail processing times by license type is provided and reflects current data as of June 26th. The data reflects the time from when an application or deficiency response is received by the board through to the time it is processed by licensing staff. The standard performance processing time is within 30 days for initial applications and within 10 days for deficient mail. So I don't know, is there any questions from board members on licensing statistics?
Doesn't sound like it.
Maybe the public?
Public comment? Yeah. Moderator?
All right, at the request of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature. Members of the public, If you wish to make a public comment, please access that Q&A feature at the, through the icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. All right, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to go ahead and close the Q&A feature now?
Yes, please.
Great.
Okay.
Q&A feature is now closed.
Okay, Mr.
Debbie,
President,
continue.
that is the licensing report.
Great. Well, we've come up to the time to break for lunch, so let's break for 40 minutes, and we will be returning at 12 minutes after 1. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. We'll be putting up the break slide now. Thank you.
Take a roll. Yeah, let me take a roll call. Okay. I will start with Ricardo Sanchez.
Present.
Thank you. Sung Oh. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Jig Patel. Jig, are you here?
I'm here.
Thank you. Okay. Cheryl Butler.
Here.
Thank you. Debbie Veal. Debbie, you muted? Okay, I'll skip over. Maria Serpa.
Here.
Thank you. Let's see. Albert Wong.
I'm here.
Thank you. Ryan Brooks.
I'm here.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go back. Debbie Veal.
I'm here, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Okay, I'm here. So we will now move on to agenda item 7. I will now turn the floor over to Maria Serpa, chairperson for the Enforcement and Compounding Committee, for her report. Maria, it's up to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Today we'll be reviewing a summary of the committee's work at its July 9th, 2020 meeting. Draft minutes of the meeting are provided as an attachment. We had several presentations with opportunities to ask the presenter specific questions. So if you look at A, that's the first presentation, presentation on administrative case process. During the committee's meeting, members received a joint presentation by Deputy Attorney General Christina Jarvis and Michelle Angus, Assistant Chief Counsel for the Department of Consumer Affairs, on the administrative case process established in the Government Code. The committee recommends that all board members and interested members of the public review this presentation. It was an excellent presentation and a great review for all of us. A webcast of the presentation is posted on the board's website. And again, we encourage all members of the board and interested parties to review that portion of the webcast. In addition, there's a general flow chart of the disciplinary process described in attachment attachment 1. Are there any board member comments?
Oh, somebody's phone's going.
That was mine, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No member comments? Okay. You want to call for public comment?
Sure, public comments.
Okay. Moderator, can you open the lines?
Right, this is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A panel. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please click that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'll pause a moment just to allow the public access to that Q&A panel.
No questions?
Yeah, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close it?
Yes, please. Okay.
All right.
Maria, please go ahead.
Thank you. Item B on our agenda is the presentation, the second presentation.
Hey, Maria, this is Debbie. I just have one thought.
Sure.
Yes, I agree with you. That was an outstanding presentation. And maybe this is out of order and Noreen's going to shut me down, but I mean, is there a way we can take that presentation and be part of our, CE requirement for ethics and law?
I don't see why you could put it on the board's website and then refer to it somehow and amend your CE regulations to require it.
I think it's a great idea, Debbie.
So we can agendize that for another meeting?
Yes,
I
that
think
would have to be agendized for another meeting.
Just to capture the thought from Ms. Steele, it's to have an opportunity to review it as a CE, but not as a required CE. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So it would be a recommendation to create CE opportunity if they view that part of the web cast.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard it as a requirement.
No,
I thought I did too.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Maybe I misspoke, but yeah, Maria.
Oh, Debbie, you broke up.
Right. So if it's not a requirement, we don't need an action on it specific.
We can ask staff to evaluate that because it is a presentation that was provided by the Deputy Attorney General. So
Right.
I'm not sure what needs or requirements of those different offices. I'm sure Ann could know more.
Right. So let's just ask Ann to check into it, then that'd be fine. Ann, are you there?
Yes, as I understand the ask, it's that I can work with the AG's office to see if we can somehow transfer the presentation into some sort of a CE course for the board's consideration.
Correct. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item B on the agenda, and that was the second presentation on the board's citation and fine program. Business and Professions Code establishes the authority for the board to issue citations, which may include fines and/or orders of abatement. For some background, as a part of the board's May 2018 meeting, members suggested that staff consider using abatement provisions, especially in cases where violations involve medication error. Since that time, the board staff have been integrating abatements. Further, as a part of the board's October 2018 meeting, the board updated its strategic plan to include additional strategic goals related to this agenda item. Specifically, goal 2.10, evaluation of the board's citation and fine program, was added. Since that time, the committee has received annual reports on the program. During the July 9th committee meeting, and consistent with our strategic plan, members have received a presentation on the citation and fine program. This presentation from this last meeting is included in attachment 2 for your reference. So those are the slides that are that were from the presentation are in attachment 2. You can also view that on the webinar if you're interested, but the slides are in attachment 2. Right. As a part of this discussion, the committee noted the increased use in orders of abatement provisions consistent with the policy direction previously provided to the staff. Are there any board comments? I think we're ready for public comment then.
Thank you. Moderator, please open the lines.
All right, so direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please click on the question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. All right, it looks like at this moment there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Great, thank you.
Q&A panel is now closed.
Item C was our third presentation at the meeting, which is the presentation on the board's inspection program. Pharmacy inspections are conducted by board inspectors and are triggered by a variety of reasons, including receipt of consumer complaints, required annual inspections, inspections for specific license types or routine inspections to determine if a pharmacy complies with all state and federal laws and regulations. This process also involves an educational component wherein licensees have an opportunity to meet and speak with board inspectors, ask questions, receive guidance, and pharmacy law updates. The board established a policy to have all pharmacies inspected at least once every 4 years. During the committee meeting on July 9th, members received a presentation on inspection activities. The presentation is included in Appendix 3 for your reference. As noted as before, the slides are in Appendix 3, but it's also posted on our website in the webcast. The committee was also advised in response to the pandemic, inspections were suspended for several months. On-site inspections were suspended for several months. Inspections continued via other methods outside of on-site visits. Following the presentation, members noted that a number of pharmacies have not been inspected within the last 4 years. The committee requested that staff prioritize inspections to those pharmacies in this coming year. Board member comment.
Maria, this is Debbie. I would just like to comment that both of these, we had like 3 really great presentations at that committee meeting, and although I kind of focused in on Ms. Jarvis's, the second 2 presentations were also great learning. So I would encourage, I think you already have, the board members to go watch these because there's a lot of good information, and it's good for the licensees and the public.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? If not, I think we're ready for public comment, Mr. President.
Thank you. Would you open the lines, please, moderator?
This is the moderator. Direction of the board. I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. I'll go ahead and pause a moment just to allow the members of the public to access that Q&A feature. All right, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Okay, Maria, go ahead.
Thank you. The last item D is a review of the enforcement statistics. The statistics are noted in page 4 of the committee's report and included in attachment 4. A 3-year comparison of the data indicates a 5% decline in the number of investigations initiated, with a 21% decline in average number of days for investigation. The data also indicates a 28% increase in the number of letters of admonition issued and a 34% decrease in the citations issued. Also, a 54% decrease in fines collected. There was also a significant decrease in the number of cases referred to the OAG and resulting in a decrease of accusations filed. The number of licensees revoked remains relatively flat, while the number of licenses placed on probation decreased about 9%. A review of the 3-year comparison for substance use indicates a 15% increase in participants in the pharmacist recovery program and a decrease in the number of drug tests ordered. Data also suggests a reduction in relapse and cease practice orders. As of June 15th, 2020, the board currently has 1,371 field investigations pending. A breakdown providing more detail on the various investigations is included on page 5 of the committee's report. As a part of the committee's discussion, we noted improvement in the January data, including a slight reduction in the investigation time from an average of 186 days to currently averaging 170 days, as well as significant improvement in the average days to complete supervisor review. This has decreased from an average of 107 days as reported at the January meeting to a current average of 41 days. So if you notice that one, that was a huge improvement from 107 days to an average of 41 days.
That's
However,
great.
yeah, here's the however.
Okay.
However, the committee also expressed concern that the second level review time has doubled from an average of 20 days to a current average of 42 days.
Hmm.
Are there any member comment?
Yeah, I guess it's time for public. Moderator, please open the lines for public comment.
All right, at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, I will pause a moment to allow you time to access that Q&A feature. All right, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to go ahead and close it?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Mr. President, that concludes the report of the Enforcement and Compounding Committee.
Thank you, Maria. We'll move on to agenda item 8. And I will now turn the floor over to Ricardo Sanchez, the chairperson for Communication and Public Education Committee. Ricardo, you're up.
Oh, thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ricardo Sanchez, chair of the Communication and Public Education Committee. My report is on the meeting that was held July 8th, 2020. A draft of the minutes from the July 8th meeting is attached to the materials for this meeting. First item, discussion and consideration of communication plan regarding SB 159, Wiener Chapter 532 statutes of 2019 related to HIV, pre-exposure and post-exposure prophylaxis. Background. At the January 2020 committee meeting, members discussed how the board could educate pharmacists to initiate and furnish HIV pre-exposure and post-exposure prophylaxis, known as HIV PrEP and PEP, as authored by SB 159. Members suggested partnering with schools, professional organizations, and stakeholders to create fact sheets and informational videos about operational issues. The committee also suggested using the board's website, subscriber alerts, and newsletters to provide information and education to pharmacists. At the July 8th committee meeting, staff reported meeting with Please Prep Me is the group's name, an advocacy group. Staff and Please Prep Me discussed collaborating on messages to increase awareness about SB 159 and encourage pharmacists to participate. Staff also reported Please Prep Me went on hiatus June 30th, 2020. However, staff will continue to reach out to other groups on developing messages about SB 159, including the California Department of Public Health, CDPH, and the Office of AIDS. Staff will report back to the committee on communication and education efforts. Any board member comments? Hearing none. Moderator, can you open it up for public comments?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A panel. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please click on the icon of the question mark in a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. All right, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to go ahead and close that feature?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Are we closed now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Item number B, discussion and consideration of providing information about possible consequences of DUI conviction on license renewal notices. Background, At the January 2020 committee meeting, members discussed how to educate licensees about the possible professional consequences of DUI convictions. Members suggested publishing articles in the script about possible DUI consequences and the top disciplinary reasons for license revocation. At the January meeting, members
You're breaking up. Moderator, can you see what's wrong?
at the July
This is the moderator. Ricardo, do you mind
meeting,
doing a quick mic check?
staff. Sure. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can't now. You were breaking up before.
Well, hold on. Let me switch off of this AirPods that I have on. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That'll work. Hold on. Give me a quick second.
Great. Thank you.
This is the moderator. Ricardo, I see that you're unmuted, but I don't hear any audio from your end.
Is he on telephone or is he on computer audio?
Looks like he's connected on a mobile device.
Mobile.
Ricardo, I muted you. It looks like the audio from the call. I'm going to mute you again. It looks like the audio from the call is catching on your microphone, so it's doing a loop.
Looks like we lost him.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Greg?
Yes.
Are we back on?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, let's try this. Let's try this a little bit slower. Hopefully it'll work.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Discussion and consideration of providing information about possible consequences of DUI conviction on license renewal notices. Background. At the January 2020 committee meeting, members discussed how to educate licensees about the possible professional consequences of DUI convictions. Members suggested publishing articles in the script about possible DUI consequences and the top disciplinary reasons for license revocation. At the January 2020 board meeting, members asked what percentage of disciplinary cases involve DUIs. At the May 2020 board meeting, members asked the committee to discuss providing information about DUIs as part of the license renewal process. At the July 8 committee meeting, staff reported a search of closed cases from July 1st, 2019 to June 26, 2020. They found 9 pharmacists were disciplined for violations of Business and Profession Code Section 4301H. Hold on. And 4301 subsection F, which are related to DUI incidents. However, a review of each case found only 3 of the cases involved DUI convictions. The remaining 6 cases involved activity covered by Business and Professions sections 4301H and 4301 subsection L, other than driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. By comparison, 21 pharmacists received citations and or fines for violations of Business and Professions Code sections 4301H and 4301L during the same period. To target pharmacists with information about DUI convictions, staff said the committee could consider recommending the board print information on inserts that are included with license renewal notices, similar to mailings by the DMV. Alternatively, the inserts could be included with the pocket licenses that are sent to licensees upon renewal. During the committee discussion, it was suggested it would be more efficient to include DUI information with the pocket licenses rather than renewal notices because more licenses are expected to renew online instead of by mail. In addition, information on the board's website about online license renewals could include a link to the DUI information. Recent updates, staff has researched trends in license renewals online versus by mail. Although the numbers have fluctuated each month, information provided by DCA shows the overall trend is an increase in online renewals since the board began providing the option in December 2018. Monthly percentages of license renewals paid online at 3-month intervals are listed here. From January 2019, 15.2%, April 2019, 25.9%, and you guys can all see the numbers there. It goes all the way to April 2020, 46.2%. Given this information, staff recommends including advisory information with the mailings of the renewal pocket licenses. Any board member comments?
Yeah, Ricardo, seemed like the DUI problem mainly a lot more happened to the technician than a pharmacist. So I think we should emphasize a little more on the technician.
Okay, we'll take that into consideration. Is Bob Davila on by any chance?
This is the moderator. I can go ahead and unmute Bob's line.
Thank you.
Bob, I'm going to be unmuting your microphone now.
Hi, this is Bob. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon, board members. If there's any information I can provide, be happy to do so.
Yeah, I just Director Wong had a comment, and I wasn't sure if you were wanted to comment on that.
You know, I'm sorry, I didn't hear his comment. I sort of lost his audio there. Could you say that again, Member Wong, please?
Yes, I said the DUI problems mainly on the technician, not as much as on the pharmacist. So I'd like to let you guys emphasize a little more on the technician.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you, but I think you're suggesting that the problem may be one more involving technicians as opposed to pharmacists. And if we could find information directed toward technicians, yes, we certainly could do that. We could use the same routes that were suggested for pharmacists or whatever the board would prefer.
Okay, thank you. Any other board member comments? Hearing none, moderator, can you open it up for public comments?
Yes, let me get that open. Members of the public, at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Please access that Q&A feature by clicking the question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. All right, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that?
Please do, and I'll continue.
Just one second, Cheryl.
Ricardo?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad you pick up this subject. You know, a lot of disciplinary cases involve the DUI. So I'm glad you pick up the subject, and hopefully you could really educate them so to prevent all this problem, because most of our disciplinary cases DUI cases.
Yeah, it's about getting the information out to the public and our licensees, and you know, we have a great staff, and you know, they come up with great ideas, suggest to us also, and you know, this is where we brainstorm and put things together, and put it to work. But hopefully we can better educate the pharmacists and also the public or the licensees.
This is Cheryl. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm sorry because I was trying to comment right after Albert, but I realized I had to mute on my phone. But I really thought we were going to get more than what showed up when staff investigated as far as pharmacists was concerned. So I'm really happy to see that result. But I do agree with Albert then because we do see a lot of cases of DUI. So I do agree with Albert and that it seems necessary then that we get that information out.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, we're hopefully can save someone's license or life, you know, by getting that information out, and just come up with new ways of communicating with our licensees. So, any more comments from board members?
Ricardo, the
Yes.
problem is that, you know, is that they really don't know the consequence of the DUI. I mean, they think we're gonna hit them on the second one or third one, but you know, we hit them on the first one. So make sure they understand that when they get the DUI, they're gonna be penalized. Okay.
Yeah, it has a great impact. I mean, it affects licensees. You know, obviously their life or their pay and so forth, and their way of making a living, and the fines and also the jail time if you get convicted more than once are grave.
It's the testing that, you know, they have to go through, and you know, when they're on probation, and also there's a lot of restriction on the PIC, all these things. So, you know, my problem is that I don't think they understand the consequence of the DUI. So I would really want you to emphasize how important, how severe they will be punished for that.
We will definitely relay that, and Bob Davila's on with us now, listening. Get that information across to them and have them give us the best way of relating that information to make sure that they understand the you know, gravity of getting a DUI.
Thank you.
But thank you for your comment. Any more board member comments? Hearing none, moderator, I'm not sure. Did I open it up for public comments?
Not yet. Not yet. Let's go ahead and do it.
Okay, let's open it up for public comments.
Right. At the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please access that Q&A feature by clicking that question mark button within a square at the bottom of your WebEx screen. All right, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to go ahead and close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. If you can close that, appreciate it.
And do you still need Bob unmuted? I muted him earlier because I had some background noise coming from his audio.
If you could unmute him, I'd appreciate it because we're almost done with my report, and if he, I may need him to interject on a couple of them.
Okay, Bob, I'm going to unmute your microphone again. Just make sure that when you're not speaking to mute your microphone. All right, you are unmuted. Thank you.
Okay. Section C is an update on communication and public education activities by staff. First, to save time, I would like to report on each item in this section and ask for any board or public comment to come at the end of it. So with that, I'll go down the list and give you a rundown of what's been happening. The script, staff reported the most recent issue of the newsletter was published in March. Planning for the next issue is expected in summer. Staff also reported plans to develop an online survey pharmacists can take to receive 1 hour of CE credit as directed by the board. Projects, there's online registry of services, notice to consumer posters, and disciplinary cases summaries, which you have, the board has a list there. Board provided training. Staff is developing a WebEx meeting format to provide the prescription drug abuse training that was previously provided at all-day events. Participants will log in to participate in the training and take a quiz at the end to receive CE credit. This will be available in the coming months. Staff also reported on progress in developing 2020 pharmacy law webinar, which provides pharmacists with 1 hour of board-provided CE law and ethics. The new webinar is now posted on the board's website. News media, staff provided a list of recent news media inquiries, of which there's a copy of the list in attachment 1. Public outreach. Because of the shelter-in-place orders during the COVID-19 pandemic emergency, board inspectors and staff reported no outreach events since the last committee meeting. It is possible that some events may be scheduled later this year. Any board member comments? Okay, hearing none. Public comments. Moderator, can you open it up for the public?
Right, this is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. I'll pause a moment to allow the members of the public to access that Q&A feature. All right, and it looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature now?
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay. With that, this concludes the report of the Communication and Public Education Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. Okay, we're now up to agenda item 9, Legislation Regulation Committee. So I will turn that over to the chairperson, who happens to be me. So as the chairperson of the Legislation Regulation Committee, I'll provide a summary of the committee's work during its July 8th meeting. As you may recall, during the June 18th, 2020 meeting, the board received a public comment requesting that the board provide a policy statement or other ruling regarding the mandatory reporting provision of California Penal Code Section 11160 and its applicability to community pharmacists. Subsequent to the meeting, the board received a formal request for consideration, which is included in the meeting materials, along with a legal analysis provided by DCA counsel William McGuire. During our committee meeting, we discussed the petition and conclusions of DCA counsel. The legal analysis concluded that it does not appear that a community pharmacist would be considered a mandatory reporter under the provisions of the penal code, but it also details that there is no definition of community pharmacist. The analysis cautions that an independent assessment of the facts should be made. As I shared during the committee meeting, I agree with the recommendation of the council that the board refrain from issuing an interpretive ruling or policy statement for the previously stated reasons, but also because enforcement of the provision does not really reside with the board. The committee did not take action on the item. Members, do you have any comments or questions? Please remember to open your line, identify yourself prior to speaking. Not hearing any, I'll now ask for public comment. So moderator, please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please click that question mark within a square at the bottom of your WebEx screen.
Doesn't look like we have any, so let's close it up.
Okay, I will close the Q&A feature now.
Okay, thank you. Next item is discussion and consideration of pharmacy security requirements. During our meeting, we discussed the significant damage and destruction that occurred on or around May 29th in numerous pharmacies in California and nationwide. The scope of damage ranged significantly, and in some cases appears to escalate over time. Some pharmacies were targeted on more than one occasion. On June 1st, 2020, the board released guidance to provide pharmacies with recommendations on actions to take, and also reminded licensees of the Ask Inspector email and phone number. For several weeks, board staff communicated with pharmacies who experienced damage and losses, primarily during the period of May 29th, 2020 to June 2nd, 2020. Based on the voluntary reporting of closures, damages, and controlled substance losses as of June 30th, the board is aware of 286 pharmacies reporting damage or destruction. The reporting indicates that 98 of the pharmacies sustaining damage were independent pharmacies and 5 of them remain closed. Further, the reporting indicates that 187 chain store pharmacies were impacted, with 100 either still closed or the board was unclear on their status. As discussed in our meeting, to fully understand the scope and severity of the damage and destruction, as well as to demonstrate what appears to be planned and coordinated efforts on the part of the looters, the meeting materials provide a summary of the types of damage sustained. That would include front and back doors, including iron gates, were smashed and pried open. Safes and controlled substance cabinets were stolen, pried, or smashed open. Surveillance videos inside some pharmacies showed groups arriving in cars and trucks with hammers, drills, saws, chains, and bolt cutters. In some cases, there appeared to be coordination between several groups, with each following in close succession. Refrigerator doors were left open, and fire extinguishers were used, leaving retardant throughout pharmacies. 2 pharmacies were set on fire. Pharmacies were looted while the pharmacy was open, while the pharmacy was closed, even after the windows and doors were boarded up. Many alarm systems were activated, but law enforcement did not respond. In addition to drugs, prescription records, cash registers, and cash computers, as well as licenses of pharmacy, pharmacist, pharmacy technician, and DEA, were also taken in some cases. Over-the-counter and other front-end products were stolen. During our meeting, members expressed concern about the fact that alarms were activated without response by law enforcement. Further, the committee expressed concern with potential privacy breaches stemming from stolen records. The committee received public comment about boarded-up pharmacies being subsequently compromised. As a committee, we did not take action on the item, but have requested that staff research the issue further and determine if best practices or other standards should be developed. I remember one comment was made that being the nature of the destruction of the, we're breaking through iron gates and chains and everything else, we're not quite sure what else one could do, but staff is researching it. Members, do you have any comments or questions? Please remember to open your lines. Okay, not hearing any. Let's open for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen.
Okay, not hearing any. Let's go ahead and close it up.
Okay, Q&A feature is now closed.
Thank you. Next item is discussion and consideration of legislation.
Great.
Yes,
Before we go next item, this is Albert.
Yes, Albert.
Is it the board doing anything to coordinate with the local police department or DEA? So in the future, when there's a break-in, there's a more quicker response?
Let's ask Ann if she's aware of anything. Ann?
So at this point, we're looking at lots of different things. Supervising Inspector Dang, who has done a great job helping to facilitate education to our licensees. She and I have both been talking about different types of things that we can be doing. Reaching out to law enforcement is absolutely one of the things. I think there's also an opportunity to perhaps partner with the associations as well to see if there's lessons that can be learned. I think that when you look at what occurred, it's devastating, right? and it negatively impacts the business, its employees, as well as the consumers. But there are some things that I'm just not quite sure we can overcome. So we can absolutely partner with and ask law enforcement, you know, if they are interested in partnering with us, but from a practical standpoint, there are things within our sphere of control and things outside of it.
Thank you, Ann. Albert, is that good? Okay, well, I'm going
Right, yeah, I'm here. Seem like this is the new norm, you know, and we are constantly worried about, you know, being looted, being break-in. Even right
Yes.
now, you know, with all the pharmacy board up, I mean, seem like every day there's a demonstration and a protest, and you know, it seems like we never have a peace of mind. So, like I say, this is a new norm. We have to learn to deal with it. So hopefully, like I say, my main concern is that, you know, as long as if the police respond quickly, you know, we will solve both the problem.
Yes, agreed. Thank you, Albert. Next item for discussion and consideration is legislation impacting the practice of pharmacy, the board's jurisdiction, or board operations. Members, as we begin our discussion on pending legislation, I will not be reading each measure nor the bill analysis provided. I note that in response to the public health crisis, both the Senate and Assembly recessed unexpectedly in March, returning in May. Further, the return from the summer recess was also delayed. It's unclear at this time which measures will meet policy deadlines. The committee is offering recommendations on a few of the measures. There are some additional measures where I believe it may be similarly appropriate to establish a formal position. First is Assembly Bill 1710 related to vaccines. Now, we talked about 1710 earlier with our other proposal. AB 17 would expand the authority for pharmacists to administer vaccines that are approved by the FDA, removing current limitations. The committee did not take action on the bill. I note that, you know, as discussed earlier, the licensing committee discussed a similar policy. In light of that, I recommend, well, I was going to recommend a support position, but Debbie Veal, are you there? I want to ask you something. Debbie, okay.
I'm here.
Okay, the fact that we took the position on the other proposal, do you believe that that negates us taking a position on this one?
I mean, I think we should take a position on this. I don't know if we want to consider reaching out to the author with our, I mean, I definitely think we want to take a support, but I don't know if we want to reach out to the author about our recommendations or just take a support and leave it be. But I think we should. I think we should go on the record we support it.
Okay, so does that sound like a motion from you?
Yes, I will make a motion that we support Assembly Bill 1710.
Thank you.
I can second that.
Thank you. Okay, any additional member comments on 1710? Okay, let's open up for public comment. Moderator, please.
All right, the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. All right, now it does look like we have one individual who has requested public comment.
Okay.
Individual identified as Lindsay Graham. Give me one moment while I pull her up in my attendee list. Lindsay, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you. This is Lindsay Goldhorn with the California Retailers Association and National Association of Chain Drugstores. And as I indicated earlier, just want to express our strong support for AB 1710. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Do we have anybody else?
Looks like that was the only individual who requested public comment. Would you like me to close it now?
Yes,
no, wait,
please.
I have a question for Lindsay. This is Debbie.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So I know Lindsay had indicated or testified earlier that that her organization would like, instead of it to be from being approved by FDA to be authorized by FDA. I was wondering if you've had any conversation with the author on changing that language.
We have been working with CPHA on this, and it's my understanding that the author is receptive to that. I don't want to speak for CPHA or the author, but from what I have been told, the bill will likely be amended to say FDA authorized as opposed to FDA approved. But again, I don't want to speak for them. That's just what I've heard.
Okay.
I see the value in authorized, because I am a little bit worried that the vaccine is going to come out, and I would hate for us to have to sit on our hands for a month while we wait for it to get approved. But I think we let the process take care of it. I just was quite curious. I did not change my motion.
Okay, great. Okay, so not having any more public comments, let's close it up. And let's, yes.
Let me apologize. Could we confirm that that was Debbie Veal was the motion? Was the second please?
The second? Was that Sung?
It was Sung.
Sung, yeah. You got it, Ann?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. President, can I just ask to make sure that the board support position for 1710 as written is going to be consistent with what I believe were the directions to the executive officer in the earlier discussion with licensing during the licensing committee report?
Sure.
Because I thought that language was a little bit different, and I want to make sure that if you're looking at this vehicle or another vehicle, that at least the policy is clear.
Okay, so what are you asking for exactly?
If it was the direction earlier during the discussion in the licensing committee report to support this, the same language was as in 1710, because I thought it was a little bit more narrow.
Okay, so do you want us to change this in some way or what? I'm not sure I'm understanding.
Well, if I'm mistaken, and the direction earlier in the licensing committee was to support the same language, which was FDA approved or on the ACIP list, then I think the support position is good. If the earlier language was more narrow and just to say FDA approved, then I would just want to make sure that somehow the board clarifies what its policy is before authorizing the executive officer to advocate for that position. I don't want there to be a lack of clarity between what language the board is most interested in.
Okay, so are you recommending changing the language on this one to conform to the language on that one?
Well, I'll let Member Veal, I think, would probably be the best person to speak about whether or not there would be inconsistency if the board simply takes a support position on AB 1710, if that would somehow be confusing or inconsistent with the earlier discussion.
Okay,
and if so, then
Debbie, you want to weigh in on this?
As if amended.
Well, I kind of mentioned it when I was speaking earlier that but I feel like we should just, I feel like it's sort of two different things, and I feel like we need to support the bill, AB 1710. I don't want it to be anything other than a support. But I would like our executive officer maybe weigh in with the author on our suggested modification to the language. But I don't want to hang that on the bill and make it look like we're anything but supportive. But so I understand what Noreen's saying, Ms. Marks is saying. I support the bill, but then maybe as a second step, I would like to instruct the executive officer to at least reach out to the member, Mr. Wood, and let him know that, we think this other language is maybe a little bit clearer, but once again, I don't want to cause any problem with the bill because of that language. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Okay, so Sung, are you good with that approach?
I'm good with that.
Okay. Okay.
But
So
I guess, Ms. Parks, do we need to make that 2 steps? Do we need to first vote on support and then second give guidance to the executive officer, or would you like to see it all wrapped up in one?
Excuse me, I thought we did approve it. I remember.
We did.
We did for the other.
As far as for our regulation, we did.
Right.
Okay. This is
Nan. Can I jump in for just a second?
Yes, please.
I think establishing a support position on AB 1710 is definitely consistent with the board's overall policy goal. The overall policy goal is increasing the opportunity and the authority for pharmacists to administer immunization, right? So that is the overall policy goal that you're trying to effectuate. So
right.
I believe that if you establish a support position, I don't personally think that you need a second motion. I'm hearing all of the conversation that you all are doing, and I understand the preference based on the licensing committee discussion as well on the language, but I believe that at the end of the day, your overall policy goal is to expand access to immunizations through expanded authority for pharmacists. And at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, that's what you truly want. And so the negotiation of it all, I don't know that you need to give me specific direction. I think I understand where you would like to go, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah, I agree with that. So let's go ahead.
That's exactly the direction I was looking for. So the motion stands as it was originally put out.
Okay, very good. So we've had member comment, we've had public comment. Now it's time to vote. So all those in favor. Ryan Brooks. Ryan, what's your vote?
This is the moderator. I just noticed that Ryan has dropped off the call. I also don't see him in the attendee list.
Okay, well, I know he had a hard stop at 2:30. It's not that yet, but maybe he had to leave early. So we still have a quorum, so I'll move ahead. So Cheryl Butler?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Maria Serpa?
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal?
Yes.
Thank you. Jig Patel?
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh?
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. Measure passes. Okay, moving on to Assembly Bill 2028, state agencies meetings. AB 2028 would require state agencies to post meeting materials within 1 business day of providing them to members, or at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting, whichever occurs sooner. Under the provisions of the measure, additional flexibility is provided for pending legislation. During our meeting, members were advised that the measure was amended and that it appeared the amendments would address at least some of our concerns. Given the amendments, the committee did not take a position on the measure to allow staff and council the opportunity to review and evaluate the provisions. In reading the revised analysis of the measure, staff remained concerned with several technical challenges with the measure that could negatively impact the board's ability to fully consider all relevant information and could inadvertently impede public comment. The analysis indicates that under the provisions of the measure, it does not appear that meeting materials could be used for emergency board meetings, nor could meeting materials be provided at board meetings, at the board meetings. Further, the analysis details problems with convening petition hearings during board meetings. I agree with the staff's recommended position, which is oppose unless amended. As included in the analysis, amendments would include clarification that the provisions do not apply to petition hearings. Further amendments should allow that subsequent to 48-hour time period, dissemination of information to members is permissible if the information is also immediately posted on the board's website. Members, do you have any comments on the measure? Before you respond, as part of your comments, please indicate if you would like to offer a motion to recommend a position to the board on the bill. Please remember to identify yourself before you start speaking. Members?
Mr. President, this is
Yeah.
Maria.
Yes, Maria.
I'd like to offer a motion that the board take the position of oppose unless amended.
Thank you, Maria. Do I have a second?
Go ahead and second that. It's Ricardo.
Thank you, Ricardo. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional member comments? Not hearing any. Let's open up for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
All right, at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. Okay, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Okay, it's now time to vote on this. I will begin with Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Ho.
Yes.
Thank you. Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Gerald Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. Moderator, did Ryan Brooks return or not?
This is the moderator. It looks like Ryan is not on the call.
Okay, thank you very much. Ricardo Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. Motion passes. Next is Assembly Bill 2077, which is related to hypodermic needles and syringes. AB 2077 bill extends until January 1, 2026, the sunset date of the current law that allows the retail sale or furnishing of a hypodermic needle or syringe to a person 18 years of age or older without a prescription. As indicated in the bill analysis, the board has historically supported such measures. The committee is recommending a support position on the measure. Members, are there any comments on the measure? No? Okay. Let's open for public comment.
I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Maria.
This is Maria. I'd like to recommend that the board adopt a support position.
Okay, actually, we do have a committee motion, so.
Sorry. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, time to open up for public comment. Moderator?
All right, this is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. And it looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and vote related to this bill. We'll start with Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Ho.
Yes.
Thank you. Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. And the motion passes. Okay, next is Assembly Bill 2113, refugees, asylees, and immigrants. Assembly Bill 2113 would require boards within the DCA to expedite the initial licensure process for an applicant who supplies satisfactory evidence to the board that the applicant is a refugee, been granted political asylum, or possesses a special immigrant visa. The committee is not offering a recommendation on this measure. I also note that staff is not offering a recommendation. Are there any member comments? Okay, not hearing any. Let's open up for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
All right, under the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that icon of the question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close it?
Yes, please. Okay, let me ask one time. Does anybody wish to either take a position in support or opposition to this bill? Not hearing any, I will move on. Assembly Bill 2549, temporary licenses. AB 2549 would require the board to issue temporary licenses to military spouses and require the board to promulgate regulations. The temporary license will be good for up to 12 months. The bill analysis includes some consumer protection concerns with the measure in its current form. Staff is recommending an oppose unless amended position, noting that legal requirements and practice standards for pharmacists vary between jurisdictions and suggest it may be appropriate to specify that passing the CPJE must be a requirement prior to issuing a temporary pharmacist license. The committee did not offer a recommendation on the measure. I do agree with staff's recommendation to oppose unless amended, and agree that such a requirement would be consistent with the board's consumer protection mandate to require them to take CPJE. Do any members have comment, or would any member like to make a motion either in support of the opposed position or in opposition to it?
Greg, I'll make a motion to support unless amended.
Support.
And the amendment being as you stated.
It was oppose unless amended.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Hi, this is Tom. I can second that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any more comments by members? Okay, let's open to the public. Moderator,
All right,
please open.
At the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. All right, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close it?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to oppose unless amended. I'll take votes now. Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Ho.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. So we opposed unless amended. Next bill, AB 2983, automatic refills. AB 2983 would prohibit a pharmacy from automatically contacting a prescriber to request refill authorization unless the prescriber or patient has expressly authorized such contact. As indicated in the bill analysis, the board has a pending regulation change that supports the staff recommendation for a support position on this measure. Staff notes that as part of its pending regulations, it would prevent a pharmacy from automatically enrolling an individual into an auto refill program, and notes that some of patient safety concerns being addressed in the board's regulation proposal would also be remedied by the proposed legislation here. During the meeting, we were advised that the National Association of Chain Drugstores has an opposed position on the measure. The committee did not offer a recommendation on the measure. I agree with staff recommendation, request that members consider establishing a support position on the measure. Members, do you have any comments on the measure? Okay.
Greg, I will make for support.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? Okay, I will. I'm sorry, what?
This is Cheryl Butler, and I second.
Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any additional member comments? Okay, let's open for the public.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that icon with the question marks in a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. All right, and it looks like we do have one request for comment.
Okay.
Lindsay Gulahorn, give me 1 second while I find you in my attendee list. Okay, you will be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning, and I am unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you. This is Lindsay Gulahorn. I represent the California Retailers Association and the National Association of Chain Drugstores. As President Lippy indicated, we are opposed to AB 2983 and we remain opposed. The bill was amended in June to address a number of our concerns, but the big one that is still a big concern for us is that it prohibits pharmacies from requesting more than the number of refills authorized in the original prescription. We think this is potentially harmful for patients, especially now during the COVID-19 pandemic. Patients who have chronic conditions or managing multiple medications rely on the automated refill process to adhere to those medications. So for these reasons, we remain opposed to the bill. We will also be commenting on the board's proposed auto refill regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Hey, Greg, do we know what the, and maybe I just missed it, what was the purpose of the author for this bill?
The purpose of the author was, well, there were a couple of them, and Ann knows a little bit more than I do, so let's let her speak.
Yeah, so included in the measure itself is the legislative declaration and findings, and that really kind of lays out the policy arguments for why the legislation is necessary. So it notes that auto refills can be helpful, but that the intent of the legislature is that prescribers should retain a little more discretion over the number of refills. I will tell you that we have received complaints from physicians that are indicating that there's an automated process for pharmacies to, it sounds like they just ping prescribers continuing to ask for refill requests. So it's not necessarily, a deliberative action. It's just an automated function, and it appears to have become a problem in the medical community. And we've received actually some information where even when a prescriber has indicated no, they're continuing to get these automated requests for the refills. And then, of course, our initial statement of reason lays out the policy arguments for why, as why you're moving forward with the regulations with respect to the auto refill programs.
Right. Well, plus one of the problems is that the patient, may have excess medication and not need a refill at that time. And then the prescriber doesn't know about it, so the pharmacy automatically calls and asks for a refill, and they fill it, and the patient didn't even want it or didn't need it at that time. And the prescribers are complaining about, constant pressure on their staff with these phone calls coming in. And, this just says that they can't do it unless they're authorized by the patient.
Well, I'm by the patient, but I guess as I was sitting here looking at this, it says it has to be authorized by the prescriber and the patient.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Why would the prescriber authorize?
Well, it's a refill. It's a refill. The patient can't just call and get a refill without authorization from the prescriber.
Well, I know, but refill. It says contact the prescriber to request a refill authorized unless the prescriber or patient has expressly authorized such contact. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, how would a prescriber authorize contact by the pharmacy?
How would they?
So I think that
I see what you're saying. Okay.
I think that one of the provisions is it's the use of an automated computer system. I think is part of the legislation.
So like e-prescribing, like they don't want the pharmacy do. I know some pharmacies like do e-prescribing.
I don't know that this would apply to e-prescribing, but I'm happy to reach out to the author's office if you would like.
Excuse me, I thought this had to do with refills.
It does.
And not prescribing, just refills.
Yes.
So
I understand. I guess I understand not wanting to get constantly pinged what you're describing here, but I guess I'm trying to madly find what page this is on so I can read it a little better. Apparently, you know what? I'm going to pull my motion because I think I'm not adequately prepared to vote on this.
Okay.
I would move to the support, just like that second. I mean, when I first heard it, I thought it was a good idea to have someone to have already called on my refill, but I totally understand how a doctor could decide to change the medication and then something's been automatically refilled and it get picked up. And so I think that it's okay that a patient let the pharmacy know that I'm okay with an automatic refill instead of it just being automatically refilled. So I think that I'm good with making the motion.
I second it. I second it.
Okay, that's Albert. Okay.
This is the moderator. Just to interrupt real quick, we did have another individual who requested public comment.
Okay.
Individual identified as Joel Hockman. Joel, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning, and I'm unmuting your microphone now.
Great, thank you. I am an independent pharmacy owner in Sacramento, and while the intent of this is to prevent mail-order pharmacies from overfilling prescriptions, this harms independent pharmacies who have personal relationships with their patients and prescribers. This proposal places an unnecessary burden on smaller independent retail pharmacies who are the pillar of their community and who are already required by PBM contracts to manage prescription refills to ensure that nothing is filled too early or without authorization by the patient or prescriber. To effectively implement this proposal, the board and the legislature should focus on those that use this, who are the PBM and insurance company mail order owned pharmacies, not local independent retail pharmacies. This will create operational cost increase to my business in an environment where PBMs underpay us for claims. I I encourage any board member to come by my pharmacy and witness our current process that ensures that patients are not missing any medications. We make a request. If the request is denied, we tell the patient we do not auto refill. This is not good for us. This is not good for our patients and for their consistency in receiving their medications. I really strongly think you guys need to reconsider your position on this and go back to the author and figure out another solution. We are not the ones that are doing this. This is Optum, Express Scripts, CVS Caremark. Their mail order pharmacies are the ones that are creating this problem, not us. This is very dangerous to the health of our patients. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
All right, this is the moderator. Our next individual identified as Stephen Gray.
Okay.
All right, Stephen, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak in a 10-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment on this. This is a long-standing debate. As legislation have been proposed, regulations been proposed and passed in Oregon and several other states because of concern over automated refill programs. The reality is that a lot of computers, as soon as they fill prescription number 1, if it doesn't have any refills, the computer automatically contacts the prescriber to get a refill, and that just goes on and on with a lot of the computer systems. And so the point is, no pharmacist looks at the patient's record, looks at the medication, and says, yes, it's appropriate for a refill. Let's go ahead and ask the prescriber for a refill. And despite what these computer systems do, the refill systems just keep going on and on. It's interesting that California law already requires that a non-licensed person cannot contact a prescriber for a refill authorization unless that non-licensed person is directed to do so by a pharmacist. That's current in California law. And yet we have these computer systems that are not directed after deliberation by a pharmacist that a refill should be requested. Refills are just automatically requested. That's the essence of this bill, which it says you can't use a computer system to automatically request a refill for the problems that Board Member Butler and others have associated. There is a problem with compliance and people on regular medication, but there's also a problem with duplicate therapy, and people have ended up in the emergency room and worse because of inappropriate duplicate therapy from automated refill systems.
All right, Mr. Gray has completed the 2 minutes for his allotted time, so I went ahead and muted his mic.
Hi, Greg. I have a comment. This is Song.
Yes.
I think that we may want to put a hold on maybe a motion and just look at our autofill regulation that we are developing and not take any position on this legislation at this point. It seems like there's a lot of uncertain, unintended consequences we probably should look at. I really do hear the pharmacist, Dr. Hoffman, his comments. I really do hear his thoughts, and
I did too. I'm thinking about backing out on it too because of that.
I think we really should reconsider this.
I agree with Sam.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand the point in reading the bill itself. It does specifically say an automated computer system, but it seems like perhaps there could be some amendments made to this that would make it appropriate versus, I hear what he had to say, that's probably going after these computer systems and mail order pharmacies or whatever, that's just ping, 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 ping. But it seems like we're also then hand tying all of the community pharmacies in California because of a couple bad players, and I hate doing that. So I think that was very wise comment, Song. Thank you.
I'd like to hear back from Joel Hockman. Is he still there?
This is the moderator. Yes, I will unmute Joel's mic.
Joel?
Joel, I'm unmuting your mic right now.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay. Joel, hi. So being that this is just related to automatic computers and so on, that still is going to be the same problem for you?
So all computer systems have multiple settings that you can do related to how this request goes through. I mean, it can be set up so that it's automatic. So after the last refill, if it's something that we know is a maintenance medication, it's something that they've been getting on a regular basis, then it will send an automatic request to the doctor because the patient's going to be out after 30 days, right? We've just refilled the last 30 days. There's just ways you can do it so that it doesn't do like what is being described here in this proposal. We look at it. Our pharmacists absolutely look at it. We don't just blanket send it out there, but the process is just so much easier. It takes the burden off of the patient. Sometimes we get a response back from the doctor that says, no, we'd like to see them in the office. So then we reach out to the patient immediately and say, the doctor would like for you to schedule an appointment before we can refill this medication. So we take it very seriously in terms of our relationship with each one of our clients who we know very intimately about what this process is and how it should work. If this proposal is to go through and it's really going to handcuff us. It really is going to create some additional workload burdens that really are just not necessary. I understand the intent of this. I get it. I used to get my stuff from mail order years and years ago, and they just automatically send it without you ever asking for it. And sometimes you're just like, what's the problem here?
Right.
I get that they're really the problem with this, but computer systems are flexible. There are settings that can be set so that it meets the intent of what you're trying to accomplish here.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your comment.
Thank you. Certainly.
And Greg, I think we've talked a lot about trying to take tasks, non-discretionary tasks off the table for the pharmacists and really the tech. I mean, I love what Joel just said, because I think that automated refill requests are appropriate and there's not a problem with them. Unfortunately, there's some groups out there that are taking advantage of them, and that's what we have to fix. And so you don't fix the 5% and hurt the 95 and the consumer.
Understood and agreed. Okay. Well, we do have a motion. We do have a second. So unless they want to change that, we will go to a vote on it. Do we have any more public comments, moderator?
This is the moderator. There are no more requests for public comment.
Okay, let's close it up then.
Cheryl, would you consider change the motion only target those automate requests?
Well, they're all automated requests, but what Joel was saying is that you can set it differently, and the problem is the ones that just automatically, if a refill isn't requested on the prescription, they just automatically go after a refill. And apparently his pharmacy and others don't necessarily have to follow that. So anyway.
I think I'd like to, staff was real, based on the information that they are receiving, staff seem to to have felt that this was a position we needed to take. I'd like to hear Ann speak on this again.
Okay. Ann?
Yeah, so happy to share my opinion. I'm not the policymaker. At the staff level, I do think that we have identified that this is a problem, and I think from a policy perspective, you all have expressed concern about medication, duplication in therapy, changes in therapies, not to mention, insurance coverage challenges and everything. You've had those conversations, not just in the context of refills, but in the larger policy questions. I think that one of the things that is in my mind is if we're trying to get to still addressing the problem, but recognizing that the scope of it varies, I think that there's a couple of different policy ways that could be effectuated. There has been, on occasion, thinking like the community pharmacy staffing requirements, where it did not apply to independent pharmacies. So that could possibly be one type of an amendment where you're still getting the overall policy goal, but you are exempting out a segment of the population that it would not apply to. So, we could say that, support if amended, or not even offer a position, but then say, like, not even put a position out, but reach out to the author and say, it might be important to exempt out independent pharmacies. Another possible thing would
I like
be
that idea.
Well, okay.
Go ahead.
Why wouldn't you do community pharmacy?
So I think I think if you did community pharmacy, I heard perhaps some larger community pharmacies that may avail themselves of this, that might not necessarily be consistent with
Well, I think what they're talking about, they said mail order pharmacies are the ones that were abusing it.
Well, let's check with staff to see if the complaints are coming in specifically about mail order. But what was your other suggestion, Ann? You had a second one.
How about say independent pharmacy?
The other thing that maybe we could do is put in a caveat that an automated system can be used, but only after the request has been verified by a pharmacist. So it sounds to me like, based on the testimony of pharmacist Hockman, I apologize if I don't have your name exactly right, it appears that in your practice, there is always a deliberate decision being made prior to the automated refill. And I think that that's a distinction from perhaps what the policy goal of the measure is, where there's perhaps not a deliberate decision for a refill to be sought.
That sounds like a good suggestion.
Yeah.
I think what we should do, I think we should send it back to committee. And go over the ideas.
I think that there's a lot of caveats that we need to take in consideration. We're kind of, we heard mail order, at least that's one I heard I latched on to, and heard independent, so she's latching on to that. I mean, I think we need to, I think that's a good suggestion. Send it back to committee, have the stakeholders give us some information, because I think that there are caveats here that there are groups that obviously are abusing it, and so we need to try to shut them down. But there's groups that are being beneficial to the public, and we need to allow it to continue.
Right.
So this is Ann. So from a practical standpoint, policy deadlines are coming up. And by the time that the committee meets again, the legislative session will be over. And I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other. I just wanted to provide that information to you, should it be helpful from a context standpoint.
Well, what if we had a special meeting of that committee?
I don't know. At the end of the day, though, based on what Ann's saying, and patients, and how patients can be affected, and based on what Mr. Gray had to say about patients being affected, it sounds like it's not just a small thing. And so I don't understand why a patient cannot request a refill if they need it.
Uh-huh.
Well, I think they request a refill if they need it. I think that I think what happens, and whether you're a chain community pharmacy or an independent community pharmacy, I think that there's proactive modules in place that help you help the patient. And so if we sit there and wait for people to call in for the refills, you run into adherence compliance situations. So, the pharmacy could call everybody too, but, people don't always answer their phone. So, I think it's a proactive tool that, whether you're community pharmacy and your chain, or your community pharmacy and independent, you use it to help with compliance and adherence for your patients.
I also want to add, this is just in a practical sense, I just want to, say that this, automatic refills are a really useful tool because a lot of times physicians don't just refill medications right away. The pharmacy has to request it, and it takes 2 to 3 business days. And, to make sure someone who's taking diabetic medication, blood pressure medication, it is really useful tool. And I think it shouldn't just be limited to 30-day supply. Secondly, the pharmacies are punished by the insurance companies on DIR fees if the patient's adherences are not met. So I think this does put an unfair burden on the pharmacies, and I think we really should look at a broader sense of what's going on in the pharmacy market.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so.
Well, if we don't have time for a meeting, I would say that we need to vote down the motion and make this opposed unless amended. But then it's going to be, how do we want to have it amended? And I think we could spend probably a half hour, 45 minutes figuring that out. But if we need to do it today, we do it today.
What's our deadline? And if we were able to put together a special meeting, could we do it in time to deal with this?
I'm not quite certain if they're going to be making changes to policy deadlines. Typically, I think it would need to be done by the end of August. If you're asking if I may be bold and offer a staff recommendation, if based on the conversation, it would seem that perhaps the best thing to do for the board at this point is to not take a position on the bill. And then we can schedule, we have the auto refill regulation going through, so you have some policy there, and then perhaps we schedule a larger policy discussion consistent with what Board Member O suggested through a different committee, and we can talk through it, and that will give me the opportunity to do a little bit more in terms of the complaints that we've received. I do believe that it's not limited to just mail order. I do believe that there's community pharmacies as well. So it'll just give us a little bit more time. Unless you feel very strongly about this legislation, I think the best course is to not establish a position.
Okay, I'm okay with that. So, but we have a motion, we have a second, so we have to vote on it. And if we don't want a position, then we have to vote it down.
I'm willing to change my motion to what Ann just said, because in order to move it.
Well, she's saying to not take a position.
To not take a position, absolutely.
So that you wouldn't have you wouldn't need a motion. Right?
Okay, all right. Well, okay. I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right.
I'm okay with the change.
Okay.
So is it correct?
We have to vote it down, Albert. There's no change. We're just voting it down, right?
No, there's no change. In other words, what's happening here is the motion has been pulled, the second has been pulled. We don't have a motion, and so we're moving on without one. Correct?
Can I just say one thing? My only concern is that, well, no, okay, I'll just roll with it. It seems like maybe this is not the best thing for the consumer. I mean, there's good parts and bad parts of this, and so I'm not sure if this, having no position is the right way to go either.
That's I think what Ann said. I agree with what she has to say in the sense of, you're right, this is about public protection. And the information that staff has looked at made us feel like we were going to support it in the first place. And if we're not, then I think not taking a position is the best position and handle it exactly the way Ann just said.
Yeah. Okay. So without a motion and without a second, we.
Mr. President, I just wanted to, this is Noreen. I just wanted to ask if this board, and and maybe Ms. Sodergren could answer the question better. Has the board ever set out its policy desires without taking a position? Just say, here are our concerns, here's what we would like to see in terms of public protection without taking a particular position on legislation? I don't know if that's too fine a line to walk, and maybe Ms. Sodergren can respond to that.
Yeah. So as I'm hearing the conversation, I'm not quite sure that we have a cohesive policy right now. And I think that based on the comments, they want to have a larger evaluation and assessment of the larger policy issue. So I think I would be hesitant to recommend issuing a policy statement or any kind of defined policy, because it seems like the preference is to get some additional information.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So unless somebody makes a motion and somebody makes a second, which at this point is not done, we will not take a position and just move on to the next item. Okay? Now, the only thing is, yeah, let's just move on. Okay, next is Assembly Bill 3045. AB 3045 would require boards within the DCA to issue a license to an applicant if the applicant meets specified requirements, including that the applicant was honorably discharged from the armed forces or is married or in a domestic partnership or other legal union with an active duty member. The committee is not offering a recommended position. However, staff noted concerns that under the provisions of the bill, the board would lose its ability to ensure minimum competency prior to issuing a license. Given these concerns, staff is recommending an opposed unless amended position. I agree that it would be appropriate to request amendment to allow the board to at a minimum require passage of the CPJE for pharmacist applicants. So that we at least have some minimum standard there. Members, are there any comments? Or comments?
This is Debbie. I would support that position. And
Yeah,
I would make a
unless amended.
oppose unless amended.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
I can second that. This is all.
Thank you, son. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional member comments? Okay, let's open up to public comment. Moderator?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please click on that icon of the question mark in the square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. We're currently sharing instructions on the screen for your reference. All right, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the feature?
Yes, please. Okay, so the motion is to oppose unless amended. So I will take votes, starting with Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez. Ricardo?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Jig Patel.
Said yes. Did you hear me?
I didn't call Jig. I called Sung first, but yeah. Okay. Thank you. I just did. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Albert Wong.
Yes.
Okay. And me. Yes. Okay. That passes. Okay. It's now 2:55. And I said we would convene in closed session at 3 o'clock. So that's what we will do at this time. We will reconvene in open session tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And I will see all board members or hear all board members on the closed session in 5 minutes.
Mr. President, can you just tell the public on what basis we're going into closed session? Just those ones that are listed on the agenda, please.
Oh, sure. Okay. Okay, we're going into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 11126C3. The board will convene a closed session to deliberate on disciplinary matters, including proposed decisions, stipulated decisions, defaults, petitions for reductions in penalty, and any other disciplinary matters. B, we will go in for pursuant to Government Code Section 11126E. The board will convene a closed session to discuss pending litigation. And pursuant to Government Code Section 11126C1, we will convene a closed session to consider the preparation, approval, grading, or administration of one or more licensing examinations. And that concludes the reasons that we are going into closed session for. Thank you all for participating and look forward to your participation tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
All right, this is the moderator, and this concludes the open session for today. I will go ahead and end the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.